myself together was a daunting task. Considering I was never even able to stay anywhere long enough to get on my feet. I was stuck in this perpetual cycle of working, laying my head anywhere I could for the time being, and making sure I had enough money to take care of my basic needs until it was time for me to pack up and crash at the next place. That was until I was advised by a few close friends at the time to formally enter myself into the coordinated entry system to help place me in a program where I had temporary residence that would help transition me into permanent housing. I went to stay with my pops and his girlfriend for a few months until I got the call from Ignite, and the rest was history. At Ignite, I have been able to just have the peace of mind to figure out who it is I exactly want to be and what I want to do with my life without the added pressure of being unstably housed. They have given me resources to help guide and anchor me in my transition from homelessness to permanent housing. The staff there has been giving me really insightful advice and different opportunities to help grow me and my personal growth. I've been given new job opportunities that have placed me in a position to generate steady income. Ignite has enrolled me in medical care and benefits and assisted me with money management strategy, setting goals for me to complete through my course here at Ignite and making sure I'm consistently meeting each checkpoint. I have a case manager who is just amazing at what she does. She goes so hard for all of the clients at Belford. I rarely come across an individual so committed to making sure we have everything that we need for ourselves to succeed. She has helped me enroll in school at the Columbia College of Chicago, which I will be attending on a Dean Scholarship in the fall.
Cue the applause, cue the applause. Welcome to your midweek connection. That young man there, his name is Devin. One of the reasons I started to do a podcast is because I kept meeting these amazing people. Stephanie Piccirilli from Ignite Promise is one of those people who introduced me to that young man as we were preparing for the gala to raise money for Ignite Promise this last spring. He resonated with me so much, Stephanie, because he could have been my son, he could have been my cousin, he could be the many, many hundreds of young people who are experiencing homelessness, or housing insecurity, whatever word, I'm not sure what's politically correct these days. I know the thing itself is not, right? It is wrong on every level that it should happen to young people. So thank you so much for joining In Other News today.
I'm so thrilled to be here, and I'm excited to talk to you about our city and our young people because they inspire me every single day.
So Deb, I know you pick, a young person who has a story that telling the story doesn't hurt them, it helps them, and it helps us to understand what the situation is. How does Ignite, how did it come to be? I know you used to be called something else, but how did you come to be?
So Ignite was founded about 48 years ago in Chicago. And what's really a unique part of our story is when we were founded in 1976, we were founded off of a change in the federal law on how they viewed young people who ran away from home or who were locked out of their homes. So it actually is, in the past, young people who ran away from home or were locked out of their homes and were not with a guardian were considered breaking the law. Okay. So the Judicial Committee of Congress passed a law in 1974 called the Runaway, Homeless, and Youth Bill. And that decriminalized young people who were running away from home or who were locked out of their homes. And it created programs like Ignite, where we can do street outreach. The beginning stages of Ignite, we used to have outreach staff members like camped out at like the Greyhound bus station, looking for young people who are running away or who were locked out of their homes and finding them a place to go and finding them support and help. So we were born out of this idea that we need to change the way we look at housing instability and not penalize someone for it, but actually help them move forward. And so Ignite was born out of that.
That's an amazing change. You would think forward thinking, much smarter, because while you're at the Greyhound bus station or your staff looking for young people, because there are other people at that same bus station looking for young people for horrible reasons.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Young people are trafficked and preyed upon in our country every single day. And young people, unfortunately, are at the greatest risk of harm. And Ignite is there to really be a beacon of light to show them a safe space. And we're one of many youth providers, especially in Chicago, that band together to do this work, to lift up our young people, but also protect them and get them on a path where they'll be safe and thrive. It's not just about a temporary step of just being safe for that night. It's about, how does a young person get on the path to living a full life and thriving in the most amazing time in their life.
And we know
Right.
how amazing it was. It was anxiety ridden. It was, you're trying to figure out who you were at that age. But it's interesting that you said that they're at the greatest risk of harm. Aren't they also, from a selfish standpoint of those of the rest of us who would like to feel like we are safe, they're also at a pretty great risk of causing harm, are they not? I mean, we all are trying to find the answers and the solutions to violence and harmful behavior by young people.
Yeah, young people who are unstably housed, who don't have a support system, who don't have a safety net, who are living day to day and living in survival mode, while they're the greatest risk of harm, but they're also in a really difficult situation because they're thrown into a situation where they are living in survival mode and they have to survive, they have to stay safe. And I mean, just imagine being a young person and every day not knowing where you're going to sleep that night, and then waking up every morning on a train or at a bus stop or in a park. And how you just have to go into this space in your mind to protect yourself and to make sure just your daily needs are met that day, knowing that most of the time they won't be. Tomorrow isn't even a consideration for a young person.
In that
And
situation.
going back to what you were saying, as far as just, preying on young people, this is where young people become vulnerable, and they become vulnerable to all of the harms that are out there in our community, regardless if they are, they don't want to be part of it.
Right.
And they don't have much choice.
They can be recruited to things that are also going to be harmful to themselves and to others. So it makes sense. I mean, anybody with a heart and a brain to go with it knows that that runaways and throwaways need services, not to be criminalized. And it's interesting because you talk about this law being passed in 1974 and the change that it created. And then you and I were speaking about there is a new change in federal law that the Supreme Court ruled on recently that may I guess Democrats are saying we're not going back, but we may go back in this case into prior policies on homelessness.
Right. The Supreme Court just ruled on Johnson versus Grants Pass, which is a small town in Oregon. And basically what they did was, that ruling opened up the door to be able to fine, arrest, and incarcerate individuals who are experiencing homelessness. On top of, laws and rules that already exist within cities to ensure that they can have safe parks and that they can manage encampments and whatnot. Cities already have those rules and laws in place to manage encampments. This was taking it really a step further and saying that if you are experiencing homelessness, we can fine you for that. And then if you don't pay,
because you probably got a lot of money to pay a fine, right?
And if you don't pay that fine, then we can arrest you the next time that happens. So, it really, it doesn't solve our problem of ending homelessness. It just moves the problem around and also causes more barriers for someone to even escape homelessness. Yeah, if they're experiencing homelessness, they can't pay a fine.
Exactly. However, people who live in areas where there's homeless encampments and you're stepping over homeless people, and the problem is right there. And as you said, in people in desperate circumstances, doing things that you would not like to have people doing. So it seems I understand the kind of the balance that's trying to be achieved. So if they say, all right, you can't camp out in the park, but here's something we can offer you that may put you on a better path. But if you've ever tried to do that, even as an individual, you know that sometimes that help is not accepted.
Yeah, it's difficult. We all want to live in safe, thriving communities, right? And we want the best for everyone within our community. We always want that. And I think that sometimes it's too easy to stamp a solution on something that we think is a solution because it's an easy, quick fix. And it's simple. And the issues of homelessness are complex. It's not a simple problem that we have in our society. It is a very complex situation. And there are a lot of complex reasons on why someone is experiencing homelessness. And the only way we're going to end the crisis of homelessness in our country is to really dig down to the deep root causes of why homelessness exists. And there's a lot of different reasons, and it's not a one size fits all solution. There are individuals that have financial issues, individuals who are facing discrimination, individuals who are dealing with health issues or mental health issues. There's a lot of different reasons why someone might find themselves unstably housed, and the solutions lie within those individual challenges and barriers, not in the end result of someone being without a home.
Right. So, we tend to stereotype, oh, they must have, all the homeless must have mental health issues, or, they don't want to be any place besides where they are, which I think knowing the difference between the so-called hardcore homeless, as opposed to the kind of almost invisible, which I think young people fall into the category of being very, very good at hiding their circumstance. I know I've talked to school principals who know that they have students that are, they're going to McDonald's to brush their teeth and try to look presentable to come to school, as you said, at an amazing age in your life when you're not certain about anything, and then you have that on top of it. And even how many people are homeless. You explained something to me called the point in time count that raised the issue of just how many young people, for instance, are homeless. Explain that to me.
Sure. So every year, every city in the country has to do what's called a point in time count. And what that means is that community has to go out that day and find everyone who's experiencing homelessness within that community. And so it is really what it is. It's a point in time count. It's that one given day in that community, how many individuals identified as experiencing homelessness. Now, we know that we can't find everyone. So we know that that number represents a fraction of individuals. So just this past year, so last year's point in time count, and it's done in the winter. So it's traditionally done in January. So last year's point in time count results were just released. And last year's point in time count in Chicago showed that there were over 2,400 young people under the age of 24 who identified as experiencing homelessness on that given night.
2,400. So under the age of 24 and as young as?
It will go. I mean, we serve young people as young as 10 now. Generally, if you're a minor, we have to contact a guardian right away, but it is 24 and younger.
Wow.
So it's any young person that came into contact with someone who's administering this point in time count. It's almost kind of like how they'll do like a in-person census, like people going out. So we're going out, we're riding buses. We participate in the point in time count. We help with that. And it's who we can find that night who says, I'm experiencing homelessness. They have to also say that they are. It's not
you have to believe them.
You have to have contact with that individual to confirm that they are experiencing homelessness. So it's not just going around and just counting kind of what you see.
Well, so, as you know, one of the pillars of my podcast is truth, and Blackness is another one. And we've talked about the disproportionate impact of housing instability on Black people. In that count of 2,400 young people on the point in time count, on that one day or I don't know how long you guys count, just the one day or whatever in January. So bless you for being out there in January. What was the proportion of those young people that were African American?
69% in the point in time count identified as Black and African American, and only a third of the population of Chicago are Black.
Wait, almost 70% were Black young people. So it's like many other things. It has a racial disparity that we should pay attention to, which is probably rooted in a lot of other disparities, economic, educational, housing, mental health, health care, et cetera. And my understanding is the biggest predictor of whether or not you will experience housing instability or homelessness is if you experienced it as a child.
Yep.
So if your parents experienced it, so it is one of those breaking the cycle kind of things that you're working on.
It really is. So Ignite comes from this place, what we call a trauma-informed care. And what trauma-informed care really is about is understanding that everyone who's walked through our door has experienced some form of trauma if they've experienced homelessness. It is traumatic to experience homelessness. And trauma has an incredible effect on someone's body, their brain, their growth, their emotional stability, their being, right?
Mhm.
And we have to understand that if individuals are experiencing trauma, especially at a young age, it's impacting their growth, it's impacting their brain development, it's impacting their social emotional development. And so any aspect of trauma is going to have an impact on that individual and what their path forward looks like.
So the understanding of trauma has certainly come a long way since that law was passed in 1974. Yeah, we're going backwards in terms of the legal framework here, and we know more about brain development and and how young people aren't they don't even have that CEO of the brain doesn't even come on board till you're like 23, 24 years old. So you serve young people up to what age?
We serve young people up to the age of 26.
Wow.
And we work with young people as young as 10 who are at the greatest risk of harm in our city. And these are young people who are not experiencing housing instability yet, but they're in a situation where they're experiencing poverty, they're experiencing unstable education or school. They're not actively going to school. And we're stepping in to say, okay, what's going on in the life of this young person before things start to unravel? Because when
Right.
they unravel, they can unravel very quickly, and a young person can be at the greatest risk of harm. And in fact, in our city, 18 to 24-year-olds are the greatest risk of harm for homicide in Chicago.
Yeah, that's that age, right when you're supposed to be, having a good old time and getting ready for college. Speaking of which, Devin talked about, from his situation of having housing instability. I liked how when he told his story, we didn't get into any, details about his upbringing or his trauma. It was basically just saying, I'm one of, I forget how many, children from a certain South suburban city, and, found myself without a place to go. And then on to what he wanted to do and how he went about, pursuing that with the help of Ignite. He mentioned something called the coordinated entry system and having to wait for months for that to come to fruition for him. Is there a whole bureaucracy around this that maybe we could do something to streamline?
Yeah, I think that every city that receives HUD funding, which is the Housing and Urban Development Funding, which is federal money for housing, has a coordinated entry system. And it's really kind of like a system where anyone who's experiencing housing instability, their name goes into the system and they get matched up with programs that would be a good fit for them. And, our city is constantly looking at, how we can improve that because, it's a database of a lot of, as I said, thousands of individuals on any given day that are experiencing homelessness in Chicago. And so, that matching process includes an interview, which is important, right? We have to talk to the individual to find out what their needs are to be able to make a match. So it does take some time. It's not a perfect system. Our city, our service providers, and our continuum of care, work really hard to get feedback and to have all these voices at the table to talk about how we should create change with that system. So it's evolving.
Yeah,
Um, you
if
know,
there is
it,
a mechanism.
it is, yeah. I mean, and just, think about it too, like, a young person who's experiencing housing instability is certainly experiencing financial instability, right? So, if you have an interview and you're to get into one of these systems and they're like, well, we'll call you back in 24 hours. What if your cell
Call me
phone
on what?
turned
Yeah.
off? Yeah, I know, right? Like, that's hopefully you have a phone.
Mhm.
Tracking someone down who doesn't have a regular address is really hard. It's not like we can mail them a letter. You have to get in touch with them. And so, we have to, as service providers, be, pushing ourselves to try to make this match as quickly as possible because it's finite time that a young person has and they can be at harm.
That's
but it is
right.
hard to get in touch with them, with
Right.
anyone, right?
And also, if too much time passes, we've seen this where they're no longer interested in that, right? I'll make it on my own. You don't want someone to become used to being homeless and become, a member of, I am now a homeless. This is who I am and who I'm going to be, which is one of the reasons that I know you brought Devin to that fundraiser, because no one in that room could possibly think that this was anything but the best investment you could possibly make.
Absolutely.
And giving him a path forward, so that he can help us, right? So that he can be part of the, of what we want to happen in our civilized society. You guys do Belford House, he also mentioned, and I wanted to point that out, that you don't just like find some garage and make it a shelter. It reminds me of a college dorm. It's got the good, the community, like a family center, right? With in the kitchen and the TV room and young people sitting around reading, playing video games. But they each have their own rooms and bathrooms, and to feel that privacy that they especially seem to need at that age. And you build it from the ground up on the South Side. This is not some renovated space.
Right. We built it from the ground up. Absolutely. Ground up in 2009. It's a beautiful space. It is home. It is a home for our young people. It's a home for everyone to come together. Young people who've moved out of the space come back and visit and come back for meals. It is an age appropriate space as well. And I was actually just having a conversation with some other providers this week, and we were talking about affordable housing for youth. And I posed the question of, well, what does housing generally look like for a 19 or 18 to 24-year-old? A lot of young people move into dorms. A lot of young people have roommates.
Right.
You're not going to find a 19-year-old who's living in a market rate apartment by themselves in the city of Chicago. It's just not going to.
Unless they just come from that kind of money. Now there are a few. Right?
Yeah, maybe, but it would be really, really rare. And I would say that's not the expectation. And certainly a 19-year-old is not going to be making a wage to afford an apartment in Chicago. And so Belford House is really an example of this age appropriate housing that honors where a young person is in their life and is there to kind of walk with them to the next stage. And so we have a second stage of housing that is called community housing, which is apartment-based housing that young people at Belford House can move into. And it can be a 2-year, a 3-year, or a 5-year program.
Nice.
And it's supportive. They have staff that meet with them on a regular basis. It's career focused. It's financially independence focused. It's all about taking care of your own apartment, learning to live with a roommate if you choose to, and really creating this path that young people who have support systems and who have safety nets usually have that in their kind of back pocket, right? Like they have somebody or they have something there that's like they can fall back on to say, hey, help me. And that's what all young people need. And so Ignite intends to be that for young people, not just at Belford House, but also the young people who move on from Belford and move into our apartments.
Out in the community. How many young people a year would you say are impacted by Ignite's promise?
So Ignite serves, this year we will serve over 600 young people through all of our programs.
Wow. And I like how you do things for them that their family might do, right? So you're having you have a whole back to school bash where they, you invite the community, and you're not trying to help them, hide their situation, but make their situation something that they don't have to be embarrassed about.
Yeah, we have back to school events. We have Thanksgiving events for our young people. We have, family dinners every single night at Belford House, and all of the young people in our community housing programs can join in. Our board of directors is just unbelievable. They come out every month during the fall and winter to cook dinner for our young people.
Wow. How much does it cost to service 600 young people a year?
So this year, our budget is to operate everything that we do at Ignite is $5.4 million.
So it would probably be a lot more expensive to incarcerate or wait for these young people to do something terrible or have to be hospitalized. It's really and it's a good investment.
Yeah, I mean, the cost of incarceration for a young person in the state of Illinois is $110,000 a year per person.
Okay. Yes, you're getting a
But
better deal.
so yeah, it's much more expensive. But I think like when we look at like our morality as a society and what the cost of something is, when a young person's life is lost, there is no cost that you can put on that.
Yeah.
There's no price tag on that. It is a stain on us as a community when a young person is gone. And to me, that's the thing that keeps me up at night. And that's the thing that, one of the things that keeps me walking in the door every day to do this work is we cannot lose young people to violence in this city and to any sort of harm.
Or just to living a life that nobody would want to live. Just to, they should have some joy and be looking to the future. And I'm an optimistic person, and I do know that but that's the goal. So we appreciate all that Ignite Promise does to help reach that goal. I want to hear. I have like this old lady crush on Devin because what he said was so touching, and because I knew it was really his story. And he talked about the difference that what can we do? I'm not going to go and start an Ignite Promise organization. I'm not going to work at Belford House, but there are things that we can all do, like contribute to people like your organization that are doing the work, understand what we see when we see a young person who just doesn't seem to be fitting in, and understand how important this work is, and how foundational to the claim we all claim we want fewer people to be homeless. I think it's an easier start with a young person than with someone who didn't get that help, and they're now kind of, I keep using the word hardcore, and I don't think that's correct, but they've kind of settled into that lifestyle.
Experience that chronic homelessness. I mean, when someone experiences chronic homelessness through their adult life, they're losing decades of their life, they're living in survival mode, which is no way that anybody should live.
And it's hard to come back from as well. So
it's so hard to break out.
Let's do some prevention at the younger ages. I want to hear one more time from Devin about what a difference we can all make.
Currently be employed at the University of Chicago, I wouldn't have been given the opportunity to connect with different networks of people who collaborate with Ignite on several different events. I would not have been able to make these special moments here tonight that I will get to carry with me for the rest of my life. If more people were able to help from organizations like Ignite, I believe we would see a significant reduction in the number of homeless youths in Chicago and be able to truly impact lives that serve to propel young adults into prosperous careers. With that being stated, my call to action to everyone here in this room tonight is to take an active stand against the barriers so many young people are facing here in Chicago. By supporting Ignite and other programs who build us up and transform lives, we can propel our youth into prosperous careers and as productive members of society. I'll leave it in your hands. Thank you.
I know, from an expert, right? I mean, he nailed it right there. So, we can make a change, and he kind of represents that change. So what we can have, what we want our young people to be. So I wish him best of luck in college. And I do know that things are not linear. Sometimes you go off to college and he's on a dean's scholarship. He could have some setbacks, but that's okay. Just like every other young person.
We always say at Ignite that no one should be defined by their circumstances. They only should be defined on what they do and their potential.
That's right. And any mistake is a learning opportunity. So thank you for letting me learn from you and my association with Ignite Promise. I appreciate the work that you do. And I know you are nonpartisan because you are a nonprofit organization, but is there anything politically that we should be thinking about if we want policies that are going to create more young people like Devin and fewer that are at risk of harming themselves or us?
So I could create a long list, but I'm going to key in on one issue that we feel really strongly about at Ignite, and it's become part of our foundation of our strategic plan. is we have got to start looking at finding solutions for young people from a policy perspective that are age appropriate for where they are in their life, and not try to take solutions that work for adults and say, okay, this solution will work for a young person, because it does not. Young people are at a completely different stage in their life. So from a policy perspective, we advocate strongly that the time frame of housing programs and the time frame of funding should be more appropriate to what a young person needs. So, one of the things that I'll share from a policy perspective is most housing programs end after 18 to 24 months, which means that if a young person is in a program and it's funded with government funding, they age out within 24 months. So regardless of where they are in their journey, right? So if an 18-year-old comes in and they've experienced extreme trauma, the time clock starts ticking the day they come in. Whether they're ready to transition, and think about this, if they're going to leave a program, where are they going to go? So what we're saying is, if you're 18, when you're 20, you're done with programs. Where do you go?
Good luck.
And so from a policy perspective, we need to change that narrative, and we need to really look at that and say, wait, this doesn't make sense. I wouldn't, from an equity perspective, I wouldn't expect a 20-year-old who had resources to be in an apartment alone and be able to afford that. They would never be at an income at 20 to afford their own apartment. So I think that from a policy perspective, we need to look at solutions through a different lens, and look at it through the lens of someone's age.
Okay, so we need to be looking at leaders who agree with that.
Absolutely.
That's as political as she's going to get. All right, folks, thank you, Stephanie Piccirilli from Ignite Promise. And you can also make your donations at ignitepromise.org, right?
Yep, absolutely. That would be great support for us. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I'm glad we got you on, because you are the other news that we really need to know about.
Thank you, Robin. I appreciate it. Honored to be here.
Okay. And thank you all for joining us, and for sharing, and for resharing, and for subscribing. And if you have comments about this, I'm happy to receive them. And next Wednesday, whatever day this is, next Wednesday at noon, we will be bringing you your midday connection again in other news. Have a great evening, or day, or night, morning, whatever time it is that you're watching this.